So as we get to the end of the Clone Wars and some of the final moments of the conflict, and we've talked about other clone units at this point in history, there's one major one that's in a little bit of a confusing state, so let's discuss the 501st right here at the end of the war. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So let's just start by discussing the elephant in the room. A section of the 501st was separated off to go take part in the Siege of Mandalore, but we haven't really discussed the unit as a whole at this point in galactic history, so that's really what we're going to be focusing on today. So in the final weeks of the war, the 501st was involved in several major battles, but most notably the Battle of Anaxis. However, with the conclusion of the Battle of Anaxis ending in a Republic victory, the 501st went on to participate in another battle, the Battle of Urbana, where they assisted members of the 212th in driving separatist forces off of that world. However, immediately following the Battle of Urbana, and with word coming in of the separatist attack on Coruscant, the 501st was divided into two elements, with a breakaway unit being known as the 332nd that was dispatched to Mandalore to deal with the occupation there by Death Watch forces. This detachment, the 332nd, was under the command of newly promoted Commander Rex, who was previously a clone captain. Under the leadership of Rex and Ahsoka, they would participate in the Siege of Mandalore and then carry out Order 66. But what about the rest of the 501st? Well, they proceeded back to Coruscant, placed under the command of now-clone Commander Appo. Appo was formerly a sergeant, but was promoted up to the position of commander to lead the 501st during this period of time. The 501st then took part in the Battle of Coruscant, helping drive separatist forces out of key regions on the surface of the planet, and even participating a little bit in the space battle. But with the end of the Battle of Coruscant, this is where things get a little bit dicey, because the 501st was divided up even further, with some elements of the 501st proceeding along with other units to take part in battles across the galaxy. Most notably, there actually were elements of the 501st present at the Battle of Kashyyyk, following Yoda's forces that were sent off to Kashyyyk to repel separatist assaults on the Wookiees. However, that was still a relatively small element of the 501st, with the largest concentration of 501st forces still being on Coruscant following the end of the Battle of Coruscant, and they would remain on Coruscant all the way through to the very end of the war, where it would be units of the 501st that would participate in Operation Nightfall, which saw the destruction of the Jedi Temple. That's probably why there were so many elements of the 501st involved in that battle. The 501st was simply one of the most numerous units left on Coruscant. At that point in time, the war was reaching this feverish pitch as it boiled over to its final conclusion, and so clone forces were deployed across the galaxy, spread relatively thin, trying to push the separatists to the brink, and that is why there was only forces of the 501st available for that assault, which ended up working out well because those units of the 501st were used to serving under Anakin Skywalker, who by that point had become Darth Vader, and would lead them on their first mission under the leadership of the Ascendant Emperor Palpatine as they stormed the Jedi Temple in Operation Nightfall. Now, it's worth noting that some elements of the 501st would never rejoin with the main sections of the unit. If we consider the forces on Coruscant to be the primary section of the 501st, the elements that were sent to Mandalore, the 332nd, were mostly wiped out in either the battle or the Star Destroyer crash shortly thereafter, and the elements present at the Battle of Kashyyyk would have seen intense fighting both before and after Order 66, and while some of them could have made their way back to the core of the 501st on Coruscant, likely wasn't many, meaning that most of the 501st forces that would have remained following the end of the war would have been stationed on Coruscant and would have participated in Operation Nightfall, which, by the way, likely had very high clone casualties, but we're getting close to talking about Operation Nightfall itself, and that's a topic for another time. And this is all fairly interesting because the 501st did hold such a prominent role throughout most of the Clone Wars, but it's worth noting that their prominent position throughout most of the Clone Wars was tied directly to Anakin Skywalker, who spent most of this time on Coruscant. But this is only a part of the 501st story. They have a long lineage that stretches all the way back from the start of the Clone Wars, the Battle of Geonosis, all the way through to, like, the Battle of Endor, and even further than that. And if you'd like to learn about the history of the 501st Legion, I'll leave a link up here to my video talking about the history of the 501st Legion overall, from the early beginnings to the later days of the Galactic Civil War. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think the 501st Legion was intentionally kept back on Coruscant by Palpatine because he wanted Vader to use his troops to assault the Jedi Temple, or do you think it was just sort of a coincidence that they happened to be the unit available for that operation? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.